Welcome to Zoe Stories. My brother made me dress like a girl. I had never thought of myself as anything but a regular guy. Sure, I had my quirks, mostly sports, cars, and the usual guy stuff. But when I look back now, I realize that my life had been in a comfortable routine, sheltered by the familiarity of my brothers and friends. I lived in a quiet suburban town where everything seemed predictable until that one day. It all started when I was 18, living with my older brother Liam, who was 3 years my senior. He had a sense of adventure, always pushing me into things that made me feel uneasy but somehow excited. Our relationship was complicated. On the surface, we were just siblings bantering, competing, and occasionally sticking up for one another, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. Liam always seemed to know how to get under my skin, testing my limits, and it was that very trait of his that changed everything that summer. We were hanging out in the living room, just killing time as usual. Liam had this mischievous glint in his eye, one that usually meant something was coming. "Hey Jake," he said casually, tossing a magazine onto the coffee table. "What would you do if I dared you to dress like a girl for a whole day?" At first, I laughed it off. "You serious? Come on, that's a stupid dare." But Liam was relentless. He had a way of pushing things until you had no choice but to follow through. "I'm serious," he said with a smirk. "I dare you. You can't back out now. Or are you chicken?" The challenge was simple, but it caught me off guard. Liam knew how much I hated being the center of attention, especially with my friends. He also knew that I'd never turn down a challenge, even if it made me feel uncomfortable. I looked at him, considering the dare. My mind raced with the potential embarrassment, but there was a strange curiosity stirring inside me too. What would it feel like to wear something different, something completely out of my usual comfort zone? "I'll do it," I said, trying to sound confident, "but only because you think I won't." Liam's grin widened. "Deal. We'll start tomorrow." The next day, I stood in front of the mirror, feeling completely out of place. I never thought I would be doing this, standing in my brother's room with a pair of skinny jeans, a pink blouse, and heels that were way too high for comfort. Liam had spent the entire morning rummaging through his girlfriend's wardrobe for something that would fit me. When he handed me the clothes, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it. "You look good, man. At least better than I thought you would," Liam joked, his voice filled with a playful tone. He had made me put on makeup too extravagant, just some basic foundation and mascara to give me a more feminine look. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I'd never considered the idea of cross-dressing, never thought about how it might feel. But now that I was dressed like this, I felt a mixture of discomfort and intrigue. "Don't freak out," Liam said, noticing my hesitation. "You look fine. It's just a dare, no big deal." But I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. My reflection seemed so foreign, my chest felt tight in the blouse, my hair seemed too long, and the heels were already starting to hurt. I was nervous, unsure of how I'd come across if anyone saw me. The feeling of exposing myself in front of others was terrifying. Liam didn't give me time to dwell on it. "All right, time to go out. We're going to the party tonight. Let's see if anyone recognizes you as the same Jake you were yesterday." The idea of stepping out in public like this had my heart racing. A party? Seriously? "Yeah, a party. You can't back out now," Liam teased. He was enjoying this far too much. As we got in the car, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of reaction I would get. I had never been to a party dressed like this, and I had no idea what to expect. As the evening progressed, my nerves intensified. I stood outside the party venue, hidden behind the crowd, unsure of how to even enter. My hands were shaking, and I kept tugging at the hem of the blouse, trying to adjust it to a more comfortable position. Liam, of course, was already making his way into the party with the swagger of someone who didn't give a damn about what anyone thought. The moment I stepped inside, the room went silent for a brief second. Heads turned in my direction. The music still played, but I could feel the weight of the stairs, the judgment in the air. I tried to focus on my breathing, pretending like I wasn't the center of attention, but every inch of me felt like a spotlight was shining right on me. Liam nudged me with a grin. "See? You're rocking it, dude." I wasn't so sure about that. I felt like I was playing a part, rather than actually being myself. Still, A part of me couldn't help but notice the way people were looking at me. Not just the guys, there were girls too. Some were checking me out with curiosity, others were complimenting my makeup or outfit. It was a world I wasn't familiar with, but one that, strangely, felt liberating. As the night went on, I found myself talking to a few people. There was Jessica, a girl from school who had always been friendly but distant. She smiled at me, her eyes lingering a little too long. "You look different," she said, almost as if trying to place me. "But in a good way. Are you, new here?" I laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "Yeah, just trying something new." "Well, I like it," she said, giving me a wink. That moment was a turning point. For the first time, I wasn't the shy, awkward guy in the corner. I was noticed. I didn't know if it was the outfit, the makeup, or just the sheer audacity of dressing as a girl, but I felt a sense of pride I hadn't expected. The attention was unsettling, but there was something in it that made me feel alive. However, as the night progressed, I began to notice the other side of the experience. The whispers, the way people giggled and pointed, their curiosity turning into something else, something more intense. I had to admit, I wasn't entirely comfortable with the way some guys were eyeing me, especially when they realized I wasn't actually a girl. At one point, a guy approached me. He was tall, muscular, and had that confidence that made everyone around him pay attention. "You're a guy, aren't you?" he asked, smirking. I froze. My heart raced. Was he going to make fun of me, laugh? But instead, he just grinned, his tone softening. "You're pulling it off better than most girls I know." Seriously. I didn't know how to respond. Was I supposed to thank him? Apologize? But the compliment felt oddly validating, and for the first time that night, I felt like I might be okay. The tension reached its peak when I saw Sarah, a girl I'd been crushing on for months, approaching the group. My stomach flipped. Sarah was the one person I always felt self-conscious around, the girl who seemed out of my league. But now, in this new identity, I found myself unsure of how to act. She smiled as she saw me. "Jake?" she asked, tilting her head as if trying to decipher the situation. "Is that you?" I nodded, trying to suppress the butterflies in my stomach. However, as the night progressed, I began to notice the other side of the experience. The whispers, the way people giggled and pointed, their curiosity turning into something else, something more intense. I had to admit, I wasn't entirely comfortable with the way some guys were eyeing me, especially when they realized I wasn't actually a girl. At one point, a guy approached me. He was tall, muscular, and had that confidence that made everyone around him pay attention. "You're a guy, aren't you?" he asked, smirking. I froze. My heart raced. Was he going to make fun of me, laugh? But instead, he just grinned, his tone softening. "You're pulling it off better than most girls I know." Seriously. I didn't know how to respond. Was I supposed to thank him? Apologize? But the compliment felt oddly validating, and for the first time that night, I felt like I might be okay. The tension reached its peak when I saw Sarah, a girl I'd been crushing on for months, approaching the group. My stomach flipped. Sarah was the one person I always felt self-conscious around, the girl who seemed out of my league. But now, in this new identity, I found myself unsure of how to act. She smiled as she saw me. "Jake?" she asked, tilting her head as if trying to decipher the situation. "Is that you?" I nodded, trying to suppress the butterflies in my stomach. "You look different. Good different," she said, her eyes scanning me with more intensity than before. I blushed, feeling like I was melting under her gaze. "Thanks," I stammered. "It's just a dare." Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "A dare, huh? I can't believe you're doing this, but honestly, you're really pulling it off." We talked for a while, and as the conversation continued, I found myself becoming more comfortable. My previous anxiety began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of confidence I had never experienced before. It was as if I had unlocked a side of myself I didn't know existed, someone brave enough to step out of their comfort zone and embrace something new. As the party started to wind down, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in just a few hours. What had started as a ridiculous dare had turned into something deeper. It wasn't just about dressing up as a girl anymore. It was about self-discovery, about realizing that I could be someone different if I wanted to. I had always kept parts of myself hidden, afraid of judgment, afraid of being different. But that night, I learned that stepping outside those boundaries didn't have to be a bad thing. The next day, the reality of the night before began to sink in. I wasn't sure what to make of the fact that I felt liberated by the whole experience. I hadn't expected to have so much fun, nor did I expect to feel more connected to myself than ever before. Liam, of course, couldn't stop laughing about it. "You looked so good, man. I didn't think you'd actually do it," he joked, giving me a playful punch on the shoulder. "Yeah, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought," I admitted, grinning. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on the experience more often than I had anticipated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to dress like a girl all the time, but I had opened a door to something new. I realized that I didn't have to fit into the rigid expectations I had placed on myself. I could be whoever I wanted to be, and that was okay. Looking back now, I don't see that night as just a prank or a dare. It was a turning point in my life. Not just because I dressed as a girl, but because I learned something about myself. I had always been so focused on fitting in, on conforming to the expectations around me. But in those few hours, I felt free. I still dress like a guy most of the time, but I've also learned to embrace the parts of me that aren't so stereotypically masculine. And every time I think about that night, I smile, knowing that I discovered a part of myself that had been hidden for so long. Thanks to Liam and that dare, I found the courage to step outside my comfort zone and, maybe, just maybe, I found a little bit more of who I really am. Thank you for joining us on another captivating journey through Zoe's stories. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and keep believing in the magic of storytelling. See you in the next chapter.